And there's
Yeah.
cornerbacks that are changing. Rookies are coming in. People are developing and getting better. Maybe people are getting older and getting worse. Those kinds of things. So, like, for example, the Chicago defense, Pride actually brought this up on one of our episodes, is that if you would have took what they did last year on a points per game basis and applied it 2 or 3 years ago, they would have been like the fourth best defense. That defensive scoring last year was just down, and the Chicago Bears happened to be the best defense. So personally, what I like to do for defense is I will look at the schedule, and when I'm drafting, I'll take the defense who I think has the best opening schedule. So this year, I think it's Dallas, because they start week 1 against the Giants. And then I'm pretty sure week 2 they play the Dolphins. And then week 3 they play the Redskins. So I'll get 3 good weeks out of that Dallas defense. And then I'm pretty sure week 4 they play the Cowboys. Or not the Cowboys, they play the Saints. The Cowboys play the Saints. And at that point, I'll just drop them. And I'll go find a different defense with a good matchup. So some more data to back that up is that if you would have streamed your defense, is what it's called when you just constantly pick a defense up off the waiver wire, you would have ended up with the second best defense overall, if that makes sense. So by you streaming, you would have really, points per game basis, have had the number 2 defense on the year instead of just sticking with like the New England Patriots, for example, or the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of those teams. So something that I do is I stream my defense, and this year Dallas is the one that I want to get.
Fantastic. So, in your approach, when you're looking at the flex option, and I mean, obviously, that as far as that goes, like let's say in my case last year, because we had like a snake draft. So when I got like, let's say like the first 5 guys that I really wanted, now I'm looking at, okay, who would be a great flex option? Like, even if I have to overdraft on a receiver, like who would be a consistently great flex option? What's your approach to that?
Yeah, so the flex is normally something that I am getting by my 5th round. I prescribe to take a quarterback late approach. So the flex is something that I'm getting around the 5th round, and there are a bunch of great players around that 5th round. So if you're looking on Fantasy Football Calculator, which I'm doing right now, going in the 5th round, you've got players such as Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Tevin Coleman, AJ Green, Calvin Ridley, Cooper Kupp, Mike Williams, Lamar Miller, Tyler Boyd, Kenyon Drake. So those are the type of wide receivers and running backs that are going there. And something that I'll do, so in my personal league with my friends that I've had for my life, I actually started with 3 running backs. So I started with Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and then I reached a little bit because I knew he wasn't going to get back to me, and I got Kerryon Johnson. So my flex position was already filled by the 3rd round, which meant the 4th and 5th round, I had to go and get wide receivers because I don't have any yet. And I really lucked out because I was able to get Brandon Cooks, who his ADP is the 406, which is about where I got him. But then I got Julian Edelman in the 5th. His ADP is the 409, and I got him closer to the 505. So you get a little bit of a discount with your flex if you're kind of playing it smart, but I really think that your first 5 rounds should be about building the best 5 players that you can get between running backs and wide receivers. So something that I tell a lot of people is that in that situation that I was in when I took a 3rd running back is, are you going to take a 3rd running back, someone who will fill your flex, or a wide receiver you're not feeling that great about, but like they're kind of there, or a running back you're really into and they're going to be their 3rd running back and your flex option, but they 1,000% will not come back to you? I'm going to get the person that I'm better with, the one that I want more, the better value in taking that running back. Or, let's say if it's a wide receiver instead, there's this wide receiver you want and it would be your 3rd one, but you don't really know about the running back. It's just kind of so-so. I would say go get the guy because the flex play could be very interesting. So for me, if I look at my first matchup real quick, which actually happens to be against our host, Big Man Mike, I have my flex is Kerryon Johnson, where his flex is someone like Josh Jacobs. So mine, if you look right now, already is projected 3 more points in his flex, where our wide receivers are pretty much the same. You know, he came out with Tyreek Hill and Jarvis Landry. I came out with Brandon Cooks and Julian Edelman. Tyreek Hill's projected for 16, and Landry's expected to get 10, but both my wide receivers are expected to get 13. Yeah. So I'll take a little bit of a discount and get some consistent guys and just start my roster as best as I can and take some deeper shots later on in the draft, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And as far as, like, you look at free agency, I mean, I look at the Cleveland Browns. A lot of people might say, like, that's a stacked offense, and their defense is looking somewhat surprising, too. How much do you factor in, along with analytics, obviously, how much do you factor in free agency and you know, players kind of front loaded on an offense or a scheme? How much do you take that into account?
Yeah, I think that is a major factor, especially when you look at wide receivers who are changing teams. They tend to have a down season. Jarvis Landry is a great example. Everyone was expecting Jarvis Landry to be close to a top 12 wide receiver last year, or at the very least a solid wide receiver 2, and he didn't really finish like that. He dropped a lot of passes. He wasn't really that good, and it's one of those scenarios when you're changing teams, you now have to learn a new playbook, and that's kind of in your head the whole time, learning that playbook, so it's a lot harder for you to actually just play football within that offense. So, for example, I would say I think Jarvis Landry is going to have a better year this year, even with Odell Beckham Jr. being there. But I also think Odell Beckham Jr. is going to have an okay year. Like, he'll be fine. He'll be worth your draft investment as long as he stays healthy. But he's also Odell Beckham Jr. There's a massive difference. He's one of the top 5 wide receivers in the league. Now, Antonio Brown, that's someone I'm worried about. You know, there's a lot of reasons to be worried about Antonio Brown, but one of them is the fact that he's changing teams. He's going from Ben Roethlisberger, who some will argue is a Hall of Fame quarterback, to Derek Carr. Some people are calling for him to get replaced. So, like, there's a massive difference. Playbooks are different. The coverages they're going to see, the defenses they're going to go against are all different. So those all kind of come into play, and that's hard to find that advanced data on those guys. And that's where a lot more of that judgment and a lot more of that research on how other guys have done and how you can kind of use the past to predict the future, I guess.
So on that note, let's get some advice for the people. Who's someone, a sleeper, you think is going to make you some money and maybe make some other people some money? And who's somebody that ESPN or NFL Network is just really high on and you're just like, ugh?
Yeah, so I think the perfect sleeper right now, and I really got to stop talking about this guy because eventually his draft price is going to get too damn high. But I'm gonna say it until I can't say it anymore. Kalen Ballage. If you don't know who Kalen Ballage is, do a quick Google search, listener. Kalen Ballage is the number 2 running back in Miami, but Kenyon Drake is currently in a walking boot. Kenyon Drake is someone you have to take in the 5th round right now. Kalen Ballage, you can get him in the 13th round. I was already projecting Kalen Ballage to come close to splitting reps with Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake's never really been a workhorse in Miami, but now all of a sudden, even when training camp started, Kalen Ballage was getting work with the 1. Kenyon Drake was going 2nd. And everything out of Miami has been, Kalen Ballage looks good. Kalen Ballage looks really good today. Had a great practice. Even in their preseason game, he looked pretty good. Now, Kenyon Drake did run with the 1s first, but Kalen Ballage still got work with the 1s in that game. Now, all of a sudden, Kenyon Drake's in a walking boot and is questionable for week 1. If Kalen Ballage continues to have good practices and good preseason games, it's going to be really difficult for that coaching staff to just insert Kenyon Drake back into the lineup. So on our podcast, what I've described Kenyon Drake as is the Alex Collins of 2018. Alex Collins last year, if you remember who that was a running back for the Baltimore Ravens who you're getting in about the 4th or 5th round, and now he's somewhere inside of a jail cell. Now, I'm not saying Kenyon Drake's going to go as far as to end up in a jail cell, but Alex Collins was supposed to be the guy, and all of a sudden, Gus Edwards was getting work, and these other running backs that were coming out of nowhere were getting work, and he finished as the 43rd wide receiver. Or not wide receiver, running back, excuse me. So I think that's something that can happen in Miami where Kalen Ballage overtakes Kenyon Drake, and Kenyon Drake is someone who's not going to return on investment. If I am not buying any shares of Kenyon Drake, I'm not drafting him. He's someone who's completely off my board. If you are playing Dynasty or you've already had your draft, go pick Kalen Ballage up off the waivers or make a trade to try to go get Kalen Ballage. I understand they play on a bad offense, some would say, but I still think he has value, and especially where you can draft him. If you're getting a starting running back in the 13th round, that's something you want.
Yeah, that's a come up.
That's great value.
Is that Tariq Cohen type value?
What'd you say?
Is that Tariq Cohen type value? Because I know, at least in my league, people were just letting Tariq Cohen go by and large, and he came through with a couple huge games for me. I think him, Nick Chubb, Kalen Ballage seems like he might have that kind of an impact. Am I off base?
Oh, no, I think you're 100%. I think he will have some big games for this Miami Dolphins team. I really don't think this Miami Dolphins team is that bad as long as Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing. I think there will be fantasy relevance, and he's going to get used in the passing game, which if you're playing in a half point or a full point per reception league, that's obviously very important. And he's someone who you can just throw into your flex and be completely okay with him. I think he will definitely give you some massive games.
What rookies would you say are possibly some steals?
Yeah, we just actually recorded our second running back preview episode that's going to go live tomorrow at 6 a.m. We talked about David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs, and both those guys, Josh Jacobs, I think his ADP is fine in the 4th round. He's someone that I would be comfortable having as my number 2, but David Montgomery is someone who he's getting too high now to draft. You have to draft him in the 3rd round. And this is someone who, A, is not guaranteed the starting job, B, is a rookie. So they still have Tariq Cohen, and a lot of people forget they went out and traded for Mike Davis, the running back out of Seattle, who was heavily involved in the passing game there. So there's not going to be a whole lot of passing work for Montgomery to have. Now, he might do fine later on in the season, like we kind of talked about in the back half of the year. I think he's going to have a great year. But the first 4 to 8 games, I think you can really capitalize with Tariq Cohen, and maybe you could even trade him and get something back before David Montgomery takes over. Some later round picks that I like would be Devin Singletary up in Buffalo, because I really don't know if LaShawn McCoy is going to make the roster or not, if they'll cut him or trade him or something. He definitely seems like a candidate for that to happen. Frank Gore is 1,000 years old and still playing football somehow. And I'm not worried about TJ Yeldon. And if you look at practice, if you look at the preseason games, Devin Singletary looks incredible. And probably my favorite running back out of all of them is Justice Hill in Baltimore.
Yep.
I said it time and time again, Justice Hill is a very talented running back. He was the fastest running back out of the combine. He played on an Oklahoma State team that was a low-key pretty good team. I've seen him gash Big 12 defenses with that electric speed, and I'm not going to listen to that.
I don't know how hard that is.
Big 12 doesn't play defense. I don't listen to that.
Knocking the Big 12.
Whatever.
That offense was nice, though.
The guy's got speed, and if you even look at tonight's game, they gave him an opportunity on the goal line, and he still punched it in. So he can still get the job done in short yardage situations, and he's incredibly quick. He has good hands. I think he is someone which, if he learns to pass protect, he could take market